Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the last day of the 6th edition of Connect University Summer School. I'm Anna Demarchi. I work in Directorate F, the Director for Digital Transformation in DigiConnect, and I will be your moderator today. Connect University has been the knowledge-sharing flagship initiative of DigiConnect since 2015, and has been a trademark for debates and policy advice, raising awareness about the ongoing digital revolution and preparing society for the future changes. This year's edition focused on digital for our planet. In the last 2 weeks, we have addressed the way digital technologies can be harnessed to tackle climate change from different perspectives, and today we hope to contribute further to that discussion. Before starting, I have some practical information to share. All the sessions are recorded and can be reviewed afterwards, either directly on Digital EU YouTube channel or on the Connect University webpage. The links are already published on Slido. You will be able to review the session as of next week. From today's special event, Connect University Junior, Our Planet, Our Future, Children and Teenagers Fighting the Crisis, we invite all of you to join us via Slido using the code #Future. You can comment and ask us questions, and we will allocate them to our wonderful speakers. Also, please use the #ConnectUniversity when sharing insights of the event on social media. So I think we're all set to start with today's session, where we will look into the key role that young people play in addressing climate-related risks. Children and teenagers have been promoting sustainable lifestyles and setting an example for their communities. But what can we learn from them, and what can policymakers do to empower young people? So today's speakers are Pauline Pasquier, Energy and Digitalization Task Force Coordinator at Generation Climate Europe, Elizabeth Schaumann, Policy and Communication Officer and Project Lead for Youth for Digital Sustainability and Digital Autonomy Hub, Antoine Linsen, co-founder at Zero, and Jurian van Reesbeek, Applied Game Architect, and Sanjana Paul, co-founder and executive director of EarthHack. So let's start with our first speaker, Pauline. Pauline is an environmental activist engaged within Generation Climate Europe, the largest coalition of youth-led networks at the European level. Within this organization, Pauline is coordinating a circular economy working group, in which an advocacy task force is dedicated to digitalization. In parallel to her studies in international affairs and her advocating activities, she's also working as an energy climate consultant, where she focuses on emission reduction strategies. Please, Pauline.
Hello, everyone. So as introduced, my name is Pauline, and I'm here today on behalf of Generation Climate Europe, a coalition of youth-led environmental networks in which I am actively engaged. I am delighted to be here today to talk about the necessity to promote a sustainable digitalization and to talk about the key role young people can play to reach this objective. Therefore, I would like to thank Ms. Andrea Dumitrescu and Mr. Ilias Yacoubidis for their kind invitation to today's event. Before diving into this highly interesting topic, I would like to briefly introduce Generation Climate Europe, also known as GCE. Generation Climate Europe is a coalition of European youth-led networks advocating for a just and green transition in Europe. Among the member organizations, you can find, for example, the Erasmus Student Network or Youth and Environmental Europe. Overall, GCE brings together 416 national organizations, gathering the voices of 20 million young Europeans. Our main objective is to provide a space for every European voice to be heard. Guided by the voices of these young Europeans, Generation Climate Europe strives to make meaningful environmental change in a world fighting against climate change. At Generation Climate Europe, we are all young volunteers, strongly involved in sustainability-related issues, ranging from climate justice to biodiversity, from mobility to circular economy. What's our vision? Our vision is a system that respects human rights and the planet, that includes the voice of young people and acknowledges our common. Our objective is to empower young people to meaningfully engage in EU decision-making processes on climate, environment, and sustainability issues, and to advocate for stronger action by and within the European Union on these crucial issues. So now, let's get to why we are gathered here today. Digitalization. It is a topic that highly interests us at GCE. Indeed, one of our task force is entirely dedicated to make digitalization more sustainable. You may think that as young Europeans, we are in large part responsible for the increasing role of digital technologies in today's society, and that it is quite bold of us to come and talk to you about it today, but that's exactly what happens. As young Europeans living in an increasingly digitalized world, we understand our position as the target audience for an ever increasing number of digital devices and services. We order our food on Deliveroo, we organize our vacations on Airbnb and on TripAdvisor, and we share our life on Facebook and Instagram. We are the reason for the emergence of some of the biggest tech companies in the world, or so also they would like you to believe. Because that's
Sorry,
not the
Pauline,
entire. Yes?
are you sharing your presentation? I'm not sure everyone can see them. Your slides?
Oh, really? All right. I thought
No problem.
so. It has been disrupted. I will share them again.
Thank
So
you.
give me a minute, please. All right.
It's now working. Thank
Oh,
you.
perfect. Thank you for noticing. So let's come back to what I was talking about. I was saying that that's not the entire truth. That you young people are responsible for this emergence of a big digitalization company and the digitalization of the economy. We are also aware of the destructive nature of a future digitalized world if it is allowed to progress in an unsustainable manner. Despite what some companies may say, we are not the ones asking to change our phones every year. On the contrary, many among us are advocating for a move away from this constant consumption model. Precisely thanks to the internet and the expanding flow of information on social media, we are extremely aware of the impact on the environment of the digital sector. See this phone in my hand. For it to be produced, it required 85 kilograms of waste and 55 kilograms of carbon emissions. Extraction of the raw materials entering its composition causes health hazards and is overall led in very poor working conditions, not to mention the pollution of waters and soils. And when it cannot bear any new updates, or when the battery is dying, then it will end up in a drawer or thrown away in the garbage. Each year, we produce 50 million tons of electric and electronic waste around the world, and less than 20% is properly recovered and recycled. Another number to keep in mind, the digital sector is responsible for 4% of global greenhouse gas emissions, which is more than the aviation sector. So to sum up, our increasingly digitized world has reinforced socioeconomic inequality worldwide and threatens our environment. Living in a highly industrialized society, relying on the daily advancement of technological devices, we could, if we all wanted to, achieve great results in the sustainable use of digital products. We already see very inspiring initiatives worldwide testifying to the growing involvement of young people. We can, for example, mention the Youth Internet Governance Forum, of which Elizabeth is part of, and she will have the chance to take the floor later on. And for example, repair cafes also in Europe. Within Generation Climate, excuse me, within Generation Climate Europe's Digitalization Task Force, we are very much interested in the digital product passport. Also, so we also call it DPP, so that it's easier to say. And we launched a survey on this topic in May. You probably have heard of the DPP. It's a measure that would provide actors all along the supply chain to have access to information on a given product, in particular related to its sustainability characteristics. We wanted to know with this survey what young Europeans thought of the idea, focusing on electronic devices as it is our specialty at JCE. We launched a large survey relayed on all social media and had some interesting results that I am happy to share with you today. While the majority of respondents were aware of the environmental impact and social impacts of the digital sector, an even larger majority had never purchased a digital product based on its social and environmental footprint, which means that some of the people aware of the impact don't act accordingly. Price and lack of sustainable and available alternatives are two reasons for this number. But what's more important is that it shows what remains one of the main issues to tackle when pushing for the ecological transition, the gap between awareness and action. And of course, let's not forget the 1/3 of our respondents who indicated that they were not aware of these impacts, or maybe even more important, the few who bluntly said that they did not care about it. So awareness also needs to be raised if we want to move forward. So to sum up, there are two things to do. One, raise awareness about the impacts of the digital sector, and two, close the gap between awareness and action. And that's our ambition at Generation Climate Europe. So now let's come to the concept of sustainable digitalization, what it is. It refers to the process of digitalizing the economy in a long-lasting and green manner. Sustainable digitalization is structured around 4 pillars. First, consuming less, then recycling, third, sustainable uses, and fourth, integrating social considerations. How can we do that? Well, we believe that first, regulation is of paramount importance. We believe that we can drastically reduce the impact of the digital sector on the environment by incorporating ecological standards into regulation. Thus, companies will need to design and to produce goods according to different criteria that ensure greener and fairer practices. Digital goods will be more durable, reusable, repairable, and recyclable, and also energy efficient. Beyond regulations, a shift in our way of interacting with digital tools will also have to change. So the second point is changing our consumption, our use of digital devices. Every single search inquiry, every streamed video or song, or every email sent mounts up to a constant increase of global demand for electricity and to increase CO2 emissions. Our conception of digital content will certainly have to undergo some changes if we want to face the climate crisis. In our opinion, advertising should also be regulated, both to further the end of consumerism, but also to reduce the environmental impact of online advertisement in itself. Many websites rely on online advertising for revenue, and a typical web page contains several ads on it. Rich graphics, animation, and video are used in online advertising, which needs more processing and energy than usual material. To put that into perspective, a typical online ad campaign would emit around 5 tons of carbon dioxide, which is close to half of the average annual carbon footprint of a person in the UK. Of course, advocating for sustainable digitalization does not mean that we don't acknowledge its benefits on our lives and on society in general. Digitalization is a driver of social change and a powerful tool for the ecological transition. However, we believe that the speed at which the digitalization sector is currently developing cannot ensure a thriving environment to live in on social, economic, and environmental grounds. Although often perceived as a burden, sustainable behaviors would benefit us all, and not only the environment. Let's take the example of recycling. According to the World Economic Forum, increasing circularity in the industry could reduce the price of devices by about 10% for some components, as recycling is sometimes less expensive than extracting and shipping raw materials. And this is especially relevant as prices might increase in the long run because of resource depletions. More broadly, we really need to think about what contributes most to our happiness and rebuild the economic system accordingly. Fighting for sustainable digitalization is also key to taking back control to our lives, to what truly matters to us. So what do we want in the end? We want to continue using our phones and computers every day, but we don't want to change them every year. We want to use social media and watch movies online, but we want to make sure that the greenhouse gas emissions costs are as limited as possible. We want to be sure that our phone wasn't made by a child on the other side of the world working 7 days a week. Now you may think, all right, this all sounds good, but there's nothing I can do. I'm only one individual. The challenge is now too big and we've already been too far. Here comes the good news. We can make change happen. We, as young European citizens, have some powerful tools to bring about the change we want. As citizens, we can show decision makers that the youth cares about these issues and that we, as new or future voters, will favor those who understand our demand for a more secure economy. More concretely, we can vote, we can reach out to our representatives, or even, why not, engage in politics. The bottom line is we have real power, especially if we all engage and create momentum. To have a wider reach, you can also engage in an organization. As part of an association, you can benefit from more visibility and a stronger network to contribute to raising awareness about the impact of the digital sector. At GCE, we use our social media networks and our events to inform on the current issues and the keys we have to mitigate our impact on the environment. We also reach out to various EU institutions to engage dialogue on how we can make a more sustainable Europe. And of course, let's not forget our power as consumers. As said in the beginning, we are in large part the driving force behind the digitalization of our societies because that's what we consume. If we change our consumption habits, companies will have to change their offers too. There are so many things we can do. Trying to repair our phones before buying a new one, choosing responsible brands such as Fairphones, or purchase second-hand phones. Every small step counts. Of course, the road to change is not easy. First of all, we are aware of the fact that moving towards a more sustainable attitude of life and opting for more sustainable digital products is not everybody's desire, especially not for large companies that are mostly looking to make profit. We have many obstacles in our way, such as ads on various social media, or even classic ads that tend more to encourage consumerism than reasoned purchasing behavior. From this point of view, the media can be a double-edged sword. It can be a powerful tool to raise awareness, to get empowered, and to share good practices. At the same time, it is at the essence of consumerism. So it is up to us to use digitalization the way we want to. Digitalization is a tool. We have the power to use it the way we want. We believe that advertising should be regulated, and we strive to show that the society depicted by advertising is not necessarily the world in which we want to live or to grow old in. In addition to this, the problem persists of large firms not considering it profitable enough to opt for the production of more sustainable digital goods. Why should companies make phones that last longer when they know that when they have us as captive consumers? That's where we have to make them understand that the demand is evolving. And an overwhelming majority of people, in particular young people, are aware of the impact of their consumption and that they are ready to change it. When asked whether companies should be required to provide all digital product passport mandatory information, so the digital product passport I was referring to earlier, well, 80% of our respondents said that they wanted the companies to provide this information and that they wanted it to be mandatory. This result clearly shows a very strong and common idea about bringing about more regulations and initiatives from public institutions, which will move forward to a more transparent, clear, and sustainable purchase attitude. People need and ask for inputs to act, and now it is time to satisfy them. So, we have seen that the shift to a more sustainable digitalized world is of paramount importance, both for our environment, but also for socio-economic reasons. We've also seen that as young people, we can play an active role in this transition. Growing number of initiatives in that direction inspire hope. However, despite the progress that has been made, there is still a long journey ahead. This is just the beginning. Indeed, cooperation from all parties is needed to achieve concrete change in the digital sector. We need more environmental-oriented regulation. We need more initiatives such as fan phones. And finally, we need more awareness raising because it is never enough. That's why we believe that dialogue between citizens, economic actors, institutions, and policymakers are pivotal to bring about the required change. This pandemic has shown us how easy it is to connect with the people from around the world thanks to digital platforms. This gives us the possibility to create inclusive spaces of dialogue and information networks. Me being in front of you today is another illustration that we have the possibility to engage the dialogue. I genuinely hope that after these 20 minutes, you now feel empowered to make change and that you will help us spread the word and contribute to the awareness raising. If we all sensitize one person to this issue today, and if the people we reached out to also spread the word, imagine how far we can get. So to conclude, our take-home message for today is that the current digitalization world in which we live in is neither sustainable nor especially the world in which we want to live in. Alternatives exist, and we can all contribute to making them come true. I want to thank again Ms. Andrea Dimitrascu and Mr. Ilias Yacovidis and Connect University for inviting me today to speak on behalf of Generation Climate Europe. Now the floor is yours, and I would be pleased to hear and answer any remarks or questions on what has been said.
Thank you very much, Pauline, for your compelling presentation. We do have a couple of questions coming in from Slido. The first one is about projects that young people can support. You mentioned some practical things that we can do. Is there any project or initiative from Generation Climate Europe that you wish to highlight that maybe we can all take part of? And then secondly, about the survey on the DPP, is there a place where we can see the results about this survey? And if yes, if you could please let us know where.
Yes, thank you very much for your interest into GCE. So to start with the DPP, the results are not published yet. We are still processing and analyzing the outcome of the survey. But we will definitely provide analysis that will be that you can access on our website, and we will also share the results on social media. So stay tuned, and you will be able to see the results in the summer or at the latest in September. About the different projects that we have, you can take part to the European Parliament Youth Dialogue. So already one has been organized a month ago, but two are coming up this year. So these are highly interesting projects and events in which young Europeans have the possibility to engage discussion with members of the European Parliament on different topics. So the next one will be on agriculture in the European Union and their impact on the biodiversity and the environment and social and biodiversity mainly. So yes, that's the biggest project at the moment, and I encourage you to stay tuned to our social media channels as more projects will come up in September after the summer break.
Thank you very much, Pauline, for your presentation again, and thank you for answering questions. I think now we can move on to our next speaker, Elizabeth. Elizabeth is a policy officer at the German Informatics Society and a youth coordinator at the European Dialogue on Internet Governance, with a focus on participation and power structures on and about the Internet. Over the past year, she has gathered over 200 young people worldwide to work on her position for a better Internet and a sustainable digital future. Within the German Informatics Society in Berlin, she also leads projects on human-tech interaction, Internet governance, and diversity. So please welcome Elizabeth.
Thank you very much, Anna, for the kind introduction. And also thank you from my side to the Connect University Summer School for inviting me and letting me share a few thoughts on youth participation in digital sustainability today. I want to cover a lot of grounds, so if I rush through things, you will have my details at the end and can reach out at any point in time if anything remains unclear. I am speaking to you about or from the lens of an initiative that came out of the internet governance sphere, which is Youth for Digital Sustainability, which kicked off in 2020. And in order to frame that so that we all understand what we are talking about here, I will start off with a quick introduction to internet governance, because I understand that this is a bit of a niche topic. Then I will frame for you how the topic of digital sustainability, specifically environmental sustainability, has entered this policy dialogue. And then we will talk more about youth participation, what is important for young people to participate in policy development. And at the end, I will tell you a bit more about the Youth for Digital Sustainability outcomes specifically. But to start off, internet governance is a policy development process that was kicked off in the early 2000s by the United Nations. In 2003 and 2005, at the World Summit for the Information Society, thousands of stakeholders came together under the question, who should govern the internet and everything that pertains to it. And they came up with a rather broad definition that you can see here. So it pertains to all developments and applications, norms, standards, decision-making, procedures, programs that shape the evolution and the use of the internet. And the stakeholders that were specifically addressed were governments, the private sector, and civil society. This understanding has since broadened to include more people, more stakeholders, and youth, while still not recognized by everyone in this space, has been put out as a specific stakeholder in internet governance, because a lot of people have been pushing for young people to be included in those spaces. Internet governance discussion fora, so the Internet Governance Forum, for example, are non-decision making spaces, and they're open and inclusive, or at least should be by design, which is why they lend themselves to having people of different backgrounds and different points of marginalization also involved in there. But it's not something that just happens by itself. We have to very actively work to have everyone involved. But traditionally, who are the people and who are the organizations that do internet governance, which is, as broad as it is, always internet bodies. So, for example, the International Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, taking care of the infrastructure layer and IP addresses. Then we have many international, transnational organizations involved. Governments are very highly wished for to be part of this, so that the non-decision making policy dialogue can then be implemented in the executive and legislative power of where it needs to be done, while still taking care that we don't break the transporter character of the internet, right? Then the internet being largely founded on private infrastructure, we need businesses, we need users, either as individuals or in interest groups and civil society organizations, and we also need academia to review all all the processes that are going on. We talk about legal, economic, developmental, and social cultural issues on, about, and through the internet. So this is a view into how people experience the digital world, or we could, and those two are not non-exclusive, talk about either the physical infrastructure of the internet, which very much also pertains to environmental sustainability. We can talk about how the code is designed, and the content layer, which is most of what we see when we interact with the internet and digital technologies, right? Then digital sustainability, in terms of environmental sustainability, is a relatively new topic in internet governance spaces. A few years ago, the Internet Rights and Principles Coalition has started step by step introducing the idea that this is something that that should be talked about in those fora. But what really kicked it off was in 2019 a youth message by the Youth Internet Governance Forum, which were the first ones to specifically name the importance of environmental sustainability in those policy structures. And based on this youth message, the host country then, which was Germany, because the Internet Governance Forum travels, is hosted by different countries, set up a sustainability corner where people could exchange on those topics. And then right the year after, the multi-stakeholder advisory group, which is those people who are in charge of leading the policy discussions at the Internet Governance Forum, made it a main topic and gave it space so that everyone could exchange on digital sustainability in the context of the Internet Governance Forum. And now what has come out of it are working groups, partnerships, attempts at consolidation, and we really need to make sure that we don't drop this topic now that we talked about in 2 years, because there's always many things to talk about in such a broad forum, and we can't lose this momentum. Those people who have been very and are still outspoken about the sustainability aspect of the internet and digital technologies are in fact young people. So while we need to focus on the topic, we also need to focus on them and how to bring them in and have them engaged. For this, it makes sense for us to have a look at different levels of youth participation and how we sometimes, by thinking we include young people, we actually exclude them, or we use them as tokens. For example, if we pick out one young person to speak for their entire generation, or just to be there to make a photo or to be there at an event, this is not effective participation, but rather tokenism or decoration. And next, fourth and fifth step on the ladder, so to speak, we talk about young people being informed or consulted about policy development, but they are not those at the table who are asked or who themselves make decisions, right? We see this more, and it is better than nothing, but it still is a low level of youth participation in policy development. But when we go further up to equality, self-led, and equity, what we mean by that is we have young people at the policy discussion, we have them included in the implementation of policies and in the review of policies. And those could be either adult-led, so things that are already in place, or come directly out of youth initiatives and are not ranked lower or on a different level, but rather are integral in our activities there. And what I said before also pertains very much to how this is a structural a structural problem or a structural challenge for us, that we don't think of participation as only visibility, and we don't pick and choose those who are the most conformist youth to, or the most visible or the most reachable on social media to make them spokespeople, but rather also establish our own open and inclusive initiatives and processes in which all of those points and all of this expertise, also as Pauline pointed out, it is very important to think that together and not silo ourselves, right? And another point that I really want to make here is what we see is that there really is no shortage of young people who are interested in their digital future or in the environment. And in many cases, this is very much interlinked, and young people understand that as well. In those two pictures, you see young people at protests. This is certainly only one form of participation, but we can use it as an indicator of how much these topics are of interest. So we can't argue that young people are not interested or they don't show up, because they do. So the idea or the action needs to happen on the policy development side. It's not the young people that are not there, but we need to make sure that we include them efficiently. So we need to empower and enable young people, give them the tools and the fora to do so. And we need to allow a change in our perception of what policymaking is. Also, what we need to do is we need to reach organized as well as non-organized youth. It is always good to, or it is the easy way to go to long-standing organizations and try to connect there. And this is very valuable in many cases. But we also need to reach those people who are not yet in any point of connection with an association, for example. And what we also need to do, what I have seen in my work there, is we need to think beyond silos. So, for example, a digital policy initiative or just a youth initiative with no specific topic should be as welcome as those who are more specific in their topics, and we need to bring those people together, because otherwise we stay in silos. And in a very negative scenario, we would then cannibalize ourselves over resources or visibility, which shouldn't be the case. We should be open and inclusive and trying to get as many people on board as possible. There's a few preconditions to climb up the ladder that I showed before. So on the end of those who enable young people, and those could be either young people themselves or adults or organizations, is a need for acceptance that there is legitimacy in youth participation in policymaking. Then we need to create opportunities for young people to actually be there and have a role and have a voice. We need to invest in capacity building and education, because it is a false assumption that just the loudest person in the room should be at the front, or that we can just assume that young people know how to enter policy spaces and navigate those. We really need to think on a meta level there. We need to provide, or we need to make sure that young people have a point of advocacy. This could either be by their participation in an association or an initiative, or at least by having exchange points with other young people, and then to lobby their interests and policies. And we need to, as I said, be inclusive, not only within the youth groups and initiatives, but also on all levels of policymaking. And at the end, I would just like to tell you a bit more about the Youth for Digital Sustainability initiative and what we did there. This is just one case of how it could go. So I'm very happy to hear about other cases. Pauline and we have been in touch, and GCE is doing amazing work too. So it's not to say that this is the gold standard, but what we try to do is, in the lens of the Internet governance policy development processes and the Internet Governance Forum, is to reach beyond Europe and make a worldwide international project where people could, through an open call, regardless of their background and their association, take part. And we had 60 people then actively working in 4 working groups while we were talking about digital sustainability and 4 aspects of it, which I will tell you about in a second. There were a few meta goals or objectives. We wanted to kind of tackle the Eurocentricity of the digital sustainability discourse, because while me being based in Europe and all of you who are here today being based in Europe, this is really a global issue, and we wanted to highlight that. Then we wanted to create an opportunity for people to really target those topics with a specific outcome and use it as an advocacy point to demand more inclusion and make people aware that this is something that needs to be heard. As I said, we had four points of how to say, 4 points of access. Those were thematic. So we were looking at the environmental aspect of the internet and digital technologies in the working group Greening the Internet. Then the working group Fair Digital Businesses looked at the role and responsibilities of the private sector and what they could do. Internet for Social Cohesion was looking into questions of diversity, inclusion, and also the social effects on sustainability that the internet has. And then we were looking into governance questions. So who should be involved, in what ways, and how to make that more sustainable. And which I want to also highlight is that the guiding idea is a multi-stakeholder idea, right? That we need everyone there in their respective roles, as we saw in the beginning. And for each one of those groups, 3 messages and recommendations were developed, and also accompanying papers where the participants went more into detail of the context and the reach of their messages. And they were just a starting point, as those things always are, but it really allowed people to have a leg in the door when they entered the internet governance sphere to advocate for what they wanted to see. And this is the end of my presentation. You can see my details on this slide if you want to reach out. You can find the 12 recommendations under this link. I can also share it here in the chat, and then hopefully one of the colleagues could also share it in Slido if you're interested. And with that, back to you, Anna. If there's any questions and remarks, I'm happy to reply and answer there.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I hope you can all hear me. Having some connection issues. We have a question for you coming from Slido, which is, as a young climate leader, which is your own impact in this context that you're the most proud of?
Can you maybe say that again, Anna? I had a connection lag. Now I see it in the comments as well. So maybe I'll go first, and then you, Pauline, can follow me. So what I am the most proud of consistently, I wouldn't say that this is something that was one point or one thing, but rather to really see that when we go beyond our national and also our regional understanding of what sustainability is, we gain a much more holistic understanding. For example, some of our participants were based in the African region, and one of them is in Ghana, and she let us know from kind of an on-site experience how the situation is in Accra and with the dumps of, you know, where all the electric waste goes. And I think when we then talked about, and in the EU, you know, electric waste cannot anymore be shipped abroad. So we might think that the situation is fine or that we did our part. But by including different people, we can really broaden our understanding. And those of us who were of the Fridays for Future initiative, they also highlighted that this was something that is needed more, that we need to think beyond our own standpoint. I think this is something that I'm quite proud of there.
So the question was also addressed to me. So I would say that it's difficult to be proud of something in particular because we don't really.
Thank you again for the presentation. I see that even the comments in Slido are really appreciative of your wonderful work. So we should now move to our next speakers, Antoine Lissen and Juriaan van Rijswijk. Antoine worked for 15 years in strategic business and marketing roles for several tech companies in the Netherlands, Germany, and US. He also did some programming and game music composition work on the side. Recently, Antoine followed his passion to build playful interactions for a more sustainable world. He's a strong believer that specific experiences can positively and strongly change human behavior. I also hear he's known for playing the piano too loud. Juriaan has been an applied game architect for 25 years. He develops game strategies and designs behavior change with games for, among others, healthcare professionals, therapies for chronic illnesses, mental and emotional health therapies. He developed and produced hundreds of applied games and game concepts. Many of his games won various awards, and in 2014, he won the ICT Personality of the Year award, an acknowledgement of his work to impactfully apply and implement the use of ICT for the benefit of profit and non-profit organizations, as well as government organizations. So please welcome Antoine and Juriaan.
Thank you, Anna, for having us. And also Connect University, thank you for the chance to present here. So everyone, we'd like to leave a big solution with you on how to improve the health of our planet. And the solution is using play. And I hope you're getting as enthusiastic as we are about it. Play is fun. Humans and animals play, but not for the sake of fun. It's actually a development mechanism. The reason why play is programmed in humans and animals is to become stronger and smarter, more socially adept, more innovative, and all to survive and thrive in their environment. And people are actually born with play before they're capable of doing anything else. So take a look at this baby and mother. Here you see a very first basic form of play. And Stuart Brown is a medical doctor, psychiatrist, and founder of the National Institute of Play in the US, calls it attunement play, in which baby and mother share looks, giggles, and smiles with each other, and through that process form a special bond, which hopefully will last forever. And when you will grow up, you will experience all kinds of play, playing with gravity, so all your senses in your head get teased, playing with objects, which you see in the top right, a little girl playing with the ball and then placing another object so that it's hidden again. Playing rough and tumble, like with animals do this as well, especially hunters, to test their strength and increase their or train their motor skills. And also on the bottom right, you see a creative or imaginary play, where you play, for example, pirate game together with someone else, and you really train your creative and imaginary skills. So you learn all these skills through these different types of play, and it can be leveraged in many aspects of life. And last Wednesday, we also saw the Connect University session. Speakers talked about how to engage citizens. And one example was using attractive presentations of data, which is great. And to trigger active, sustainable engagement, a play design should be involved, we believe. A carefully designed play will trigger, on the top there, an existing intrinsic motivation of the person. And through the creative process or play process, develop an ability how to understand and act on the data. So play, that's our message. Play creates game changers. And let's pick on two real play examples. One is Michelin. It's the car tires company. Most of you may know the Michelin restaurant guide and the rating system they have. And it started 100 years ago when the company wanted to sell more tires to their existing very small customer base, current car owners. The goal was to have owners drive more so they could use up their tires quicker. But how to get that done? They created a very smart play concept in which restaurants, the companies that also serve Michelin's customers, compete to deliver the best food. And in turn, Michelin brought out a guide rating these restaurants and basically saying, you see that the star descriptions, that it's worth driving there and using up your tires. And this created a huge industry, also as a side effect, increasing the quality of food, all through a very smart play concept. And I do have to apologize, it's not a very sustainable example, but if the play concept is proven in a non-sustainable context, let's also then take the challenge and use this within a sustainable context. Another example is Pokemon Go, and I guess most of you may know Pokemon Go. And the game, you catch Pokemon in many outdoor locations, which you can use to level up, battle with, or simply show off to your friends. But the underlying and maybe unintentional benefit was enormous, where some parents had issues getting their children outside to enjoy the fresh air and outdoors, and I really like this one. This kid is a genius. Now the play concept created the benefit. You see people, children, adults, everyone going outside, getting outdoors, also talking with each other, where to find the latest ones, and also learning about new areas. So these are effects that are very, very interesting. But okay, isn't Pokemon actually just a game, or is it play? There's actually an obvious relationship between play and games, and games are part of play. They're instruments for play. And now, with technologies, digital games on all of our devices became the perfect instrument for play. 2.3 billion people play digital games from any age, income, gender, or geography. And then it hit us, also triggered by Elias. Juriaan, my fellow game radical, and I started talking. Juriaan is using playful experiences for a couple of years already for better personal health. But then we thought there's a far, far bigger opportunity here than personal health. Let's look wider and consider planetary health. 2.3 billion people are playing, and these smart humans are very good in solving problems. In addition, we have many young people now fighting for our planet, as Elizabeth also just mentioned. So why not use that collective superpower? Currently, we use it only to solve imaginary problems in many games out there. But let's imagine, what if we let people play to solve complex real-life problems related to our planet's health? Juriaan will touch later on this also with a citizen science game he developed. So the obvious question I'm leading to now is how to change our planet's health. And the obvious answer is through play. Play is the universal medium for behavioral change of all living creatures. We build new skills, we innovate, and we connect to collectively become stronger and solve complex problems. And we have all the technology and capacity available to bring back our planet's health. The only real thing that's hindering us is our own human behavior and choice. So let's take a look at this report briefly. I like the report a lot. It's called a drawdown review. And there's a lot of data on what potential areas, if you reduce that, have a big impact on the CO2 emissions in the air. And you see many areas are actually affected by behavior or human choice, shifting production from fossil fuel to renewables, addressing waste in diets, where you look at eating less or no meat and not throwing away the food you actually are not going to eat up, not buying air conditionings or less, maybe less flying or no flying at all. buying local stuff instead of from the other side of the world. So it's all, whether you're a consumer or a business leader or a citizen, it's all stemming from human choice. So there's a lot to do in a limited time. And this means radical change requires radical methods to change. And conventional methods to change behavior don't work enough. If you tell someone to do something, but there's no intrinsic motivation or ability, nothing really happens. Maybe in the beginning, because people or companies don't get punished or actually get short-term extrinsic rewards, but not in the long run. People return to their normal behavior, companies as well. Take a look at Levi's. And I like the brand. I like how they promote it in this advertising. Ooh, this one mute. That they promoted sustainability as a company. But they and others as well should go much, much further. These companies currently compensate their emissions and use of resources with high investments in green advertising, lobbying, etc. It's a form of greenwashing to hide their true intentions, earning profits. And fortunately, on the right here, you see it, Shell recently lost a big case where they are now forced to reduce their emissions. But this is late and it's too little. Besides all the advertising, force rules, regulations, and legal actions, we need radical solutions. And play is a radical and unconventional method directly linked to behavioral change, where actually the core issue lies, as we saw in the data. So let's start playing and become real game changers. And by the way, it's called game changers for a reason. So with our play and game development experience combined, we as a company now will leverage play beyond personal health for planetary health. We're working on two new games at the moment. And one game we recently finished is about energy transition, where teenagers can play with elements of energy transition, all in a non-paternalistic, fun way. And not like, oh, you should do this or you should do that. No, just have fun. We're smart human beings. Just through the process, they will learn a lot from it and get triggered to think more sustainable in their own actions, whether you're a child, teenager, adult, everyone. And to prove how strong playful experiences can be in a serious context, I asked my colleague Juriaan to speak about some of the projects he did at Games for Health in the healthcare sector. Over to you, Juriaan.
Thank you very much, Antoine. I would like to share some examples with you how actually playful interactions or play or gaming can change people's behavior for the better. And I like this. I'll first show you an example of a colleague of ours who created a playful way to change people's behavior on collecting waste in parks. Antoine, please go ahead. I like the ways that it's possible to change people's behavior with play in a fun way. We are intrinsically motivated for it. The next example is a project we did in 2017, where we were asked by the Ministry of Public Health. Please start the video, Antoine, without audio. And it's about, can we predict how viruses spread when large groups of people are together? And it's, of course, it's a very actual question. We did this 4 years ago. And what we did is we created a game where we installed a zombie virus on people's phone voluntarily in this festival. And we asked people to make game rounds of 1 hour. And the idea was that we created a patient zero among those one of those attendees of the play. And if you were in a circle within 10 meters of that patient zero for longer than 10 seconds, you would become a zombie as well. But if you ran away within 10 seconds, you stayed healthy. And this was a very strong and powerful way to discover how people spread in large groups and in festivals. And with that, the scientists could discover how also viruses spread among people when they are together in large group to improve the models for infectious disease spread. A side effect of this discovery is how viruses and people spread is that we learned also how we could spread non-lethal or good aspects basically among people. So we also use this literally to bring good things viral. And this outcome actually improved the models to predict infectious disease spread, which is right now very actual. The next slide is you can see actually that this is one time lapse of one of the 13 rounds we played, and you can actually see that within 1 hour the entire population of people got infected. In this case, of course, with the digital zombie virus. The last example I wanted to share with you is what Antoine already called a citizen science game. We love the force of people to puzzle for science and to fix big problems of society. This is a project we did with Cornell University, where we trained actually 30,000 people to help scientists to discover clotted blood vessels. This was actually, as a result of this, we could speed up the research for Alzheimer's disease 30 times for these scientists. Let's watch the video with audio.
Is a citizen science game. We are fighting Alzheimer's, a disease affecting 44 million people worldwide. Catchers across the world are analyzing real data, telling apart flowing installed vessels in the brains of mice to speed up Alzheimer's research at Cornell University.
As a global community, we will work together to find a cure for Alzheimer's disease.
Join other stall catchers now.
So our idea is now to work on games where we actually throw in real life problems about our climate, and that we are creating an environment where people themselves are able to solve today's problems. Instead of designing for solutions, we would like to design for environments where people themselves are able to discover solutions. Next slide, please.
Stall catchers.
And like Antoine already said, we are all living creatures like to play. But animals, as part of those living creatures, don't waste. So I would suggest that we should start behave like an animal. And I think we should do that through play. Thank you very much.
Thank you to both for the presentation. It was really something new that we haven't seen so far during this Connect University. So food for thought for all of us. We have a couple of questions, very interesting questions. And one is, if you had one sentence to say to world leaders, what would you say?
I would say stop wasting and start playing.
Sorry, I'm trying to retrieve the last question. The last question for you is about how can people that cannot afford, to be sustainable or to, protest for sustainability, what can everyone do? What can we all do for this, even if we are different classes, different income levels? You have an advice?
Yeah, it's a very good question, because not everyone has the resources available to make the choice that is available for other people. So I think that that's always a tough question. But if we look at our life and see what choices do we have available, I think then we can there may be room. At the same time, we can also influence other people, also adults, business leaders, because they are really keen on making profit. But if you are a buy corp, putting sustainability and profitability equally, there I think there's a lot where we can influence as a collective movement. And in terms of play, I saw a question earlier about how can we help. I think here, because also from a citizen science angle, playing as a group or collectively in a sort of citizen science project can be very powerful, regardless of your where you come from or what resources you have available. So that may be a very interesting thing.
And to add on that, it is possible, although many games are digital, we designed games also who are not non-digital, and that's what we do in summer schools, where we actually train large groups of kids how to create games in a non-digital way, where actually board games or even games created by waste can be used to play.
Those are really great answers. Thank you so much. Then maybe we can move to a question that we already asked our previous speakers, which is, what are you most proud of in terms of project that you've done or achievement that you had in this field?
I think Juliana will have one in a minute, but I have one which the energy transition game we did, we produced, and it's now in a pilot phasing actual situation. But we did a workshop, like a beta test, with 150 children, I think, separated in groups. I think they were end of high school. And then we tested the game with them, and there were 2 days of testing. The first was with a single player option, which was okay. But when the second day, we used a different version where we had the multiplayer, and then you saw really the magic happening. People collaborating, laughing, cheering when they had a good score together, and that was that made me feel proud, and also showing the proof, like, oh wow, this is what play can do if you design it in a good way. So that day was like really good.
For me, I'm most proud of I think the contribution related to this subject I made with what we called complex simulation games for decision makers, where we actually helped the policymakers and the government of countries to actually predict their decisions in real life for the future, and that was used for the negotiations on the climate conferences. And now I would like to make games that can be played by large groups of people. to help everyone with changing that complex behavior we all have.
Yes, definitely. Gamification is such an interesting topic that can be expanded to all fields of our life. I feel now we're waiting for our last speaker. We can open a bit to Q&A, and I have a question for all of you, so even Pauline and Elizabeth. If you could shortly reply to the question, what do you see as climate justice? What is climate justice to you? Few words from each one of you, please. Maybe Pauline or Elizabeth can start the round.
So maybe I can start. So very briefly, I would say that climate justice means that the ones who have the resource to act can have the duty to act, and we have to act so that the people who are the most vulnerable, and most of the time people who are vulnerable to environmental to climate change are also the one with already existing socioeconomic vulnerabilities. So it is the duty to the people who have the resource to prevent and to protect and to empower them and give them the possibility to preserve themselves and to adapt to climate change.
Thank you.
I would piggyback off what Pauline just said, because I see it in a very similar way. Maybe one thing that I would add to that, or from what I see, is in order to be just in our efforts, we need to finally make the climate crisis a real, real policy goal. We are stuck in many ways in policy discussions when this requires real life interventions on a huge scale. And for the reasons that Pauline just said, those who can act and those who have the most impact and the most power need to do that now, so that people who would be affected or are already affected don't suffer at the hands of other people that they cannot really, reach or work with.
Thank you. Maybe you and Antoine want to give
Yeah, I think climate justice is that if we are using natural resources, or if a company uses natural resources, they can't compensate with money. I think they should put the efforts there to really make it beautifuler or better than it was before. So I think we all have we should aim that people who use natural resources, who are actually for everyone and from everyone, should do their utmost to make it better than it was before.
Yeah, and I think these answers were all very great. Maybe one thing to add is just that it's not the people who have the money that have then also the power to choose whether you go for money or for sustainability. I think everyone should be listened to. So also bottom up, if somebody has a voice, we should all be very serious and take that into consideration, regardless from where you come from or whether you are powerful politically or financially.
Effect concept that you're sharing with us today. Let us move on with the questions. Next one is for Pauline. How would you see the world in 2050, considering the possible impact of our generation? So a positive or a negative impact, taking into account what you presented about sustainable digitalization. Thank you, Pauline.
All right, that's quite a difficult question to see what is going to be happening in 2050. It also, I wonder if the question is regarding digitalization only, or if it's a broader perimeter. broader scope. Well, I hope that the youth will be able to take part more actively into decision-making processes, and also will feel empowered. And when I say that they take part into decision-making processes, I don't say that the processes are currently excluding the youth. I also think that young people don't always know how to take part in it, and that they have they also how they could influence it. So yes, I hope that on that side, I see 2050 that way. And regarding digitalization, I think that digitalization will still be great parts of our world, but we will have maybe yes, more sustainable uses of it, and concentrate our efforts on developing digitalization towards environmental goals and social equality goals, and less on the mainstream, how to say that, to the advertisement and to video streaming and video game streaming, massive video game streaming, etc. So that's how I see digitalization in 2050.
Thank you very much for the insight. Then let's move on. I have a question for Elizabeth. What would you say to people saying that young people can only worry about these issues because we are in some sort entitled, as we might have less quote unquote real life problems? I feel like this is a criticism that we often get, and I would like to know, what would you say to this kind of criticism?
Thank you, Anna. Yeah, I mean, one point of this, which I find very important, which I also saw in the comments, that kind of pointed out the privileged position that people like me and Pauline and others are in, to be able to speak on this and invest our time in it. And we have to check that. We have to be aware that this is not an opportunity that is equally accessible to everyone. But what we have to do then, as people who can create those things and who can reach out to young people and engage them, we need to make the points of access accessible. So I don't see why different people in different parts of Europe or the world or in different socioeconomic backgrounds couldn't do their part. We just need to make it so that it fits into their world, right? So, for example, as was shared, there's different strategies for day-to-day use of the digitization. And the first step is that we need to make sure that everyone who wants to be and needs to be connected is connected. And then the next step is that we need to ensure that this knowledge is available, and that we engage people where they're at and not where we are necessarily. This is the only way, I think, but this needs effort, and it needs time, and it needs resources. It doesn't just happen because someone feels for one day inspired and then everything is the same. It's like we need to, from bottom up but also top down, we need to meet on a policy level and make that open, because otherwise there will always be people left behind, and we need everyone in this.
Thank you. It isn't an inclusive movement. We're not aiming for exclusivity. Thank you. Our next question is for Jurjen. So you've been a game architect for a really long time. When in your career did you realize you wanted to focus your skills on human behavior and climate? When that spark started in your career, and why?
Okay, I always wanted to become a forester. So I went to school to become a forester. And then when I studied more, I became overqualified to become a forester. So through the University of Wageningen, which is entirely focused on agriculture and our environment, I learned how ecosystems works, etc. And my first job was actually making a game for our climate. And that was January 6, 1996. So that's a long time ago. So actually my first game was actually on the climate. And then after a while, when I saw the people playing with it, and when the negotiations about the climate conferences started, I saw this could have an impact on people's behavior as well. And I tried to make games for large groups of people at schools, but I discovered that it was very hard to reach all those people with digital games because digital wasn't out there yet. We didn't even have the internet. So actually I had to wait until now and use the power of the internet, and that we all have a phone where we can play on. And so actually this is for me the start with all the experience to provide people with play in which they are able to change their behavior voluntarily, of course.
Thank you. It's very interesting to remember the exact date of this. It's fascinating. Also, I hope you get back to your hobby of a forester at some point in your life. Thank you. Should move to Antoine. And I have two short questions. One is, which one is the biggest challenge for you in this field? And also, why do you play the piano too loud? Is there such a thing as playing the piano too loud? Please enlighten us.
Great question. The first one, the biggest challenge, I think, in the last few years, you see, I at least my perception, you see this a lot more in the news. All the issues that are there, and every time I watch the BBC News app, and there's so many messages, and I read them all about the climate, and sometimes you feel, well, frustrated, but also that you cannot do anything. There's no power for you as an individual or as a small group to do something. And that for me is challenging, because you really want to do something there, but how to start? And I think that's also part of the discussion we have here. How to make a difference if you see other countries or big companies emitting so much or wasting so much. And then when Julian and I started talking, it's like, oh wow, this is actually really cool. And also the game we developed, you can create a collective power through play then to do make a dent in the universe a bit. So but it will never ending be all these new messages with now Canada forest fires with the high temperatures. It's like, oh wow, this is so tough. And then the second one, maybe that's a paternalistic thing, that I got told that I played the piano too loud, but I love the sound, so I want to be immersed in the sound. My neighbors are okay with it, but yeah,
I think it was your brother. He's annoying.
He may have complained. yeah, that's a typical brother thing. Yeah.
Thank you. We're getting into a fraternal relationship here. Good to know. Next question for Elizabeth. For you, which is the biggest challenge as a young person, working in this field?
I mean, I guess there's different levels of challenges, right? Some are very mundane and some are very big. Maybe we start from the big ones. Is from my perspective is how to get to this paradigm shift that we need. So even though there is a lot of very smart people and smart young people lobbying and speaking out and pointing out what is important in terms of how our economic businesses need to change, how our political decision making needs to be adapted. And I see so much good input, but I'm still a bit, I'm not pessimistic, but I'm still wondering how we can bring all of those big changes in the short amount of time that we have to kind of stir everything around in the right direction. So this is from a I don't know, from a thematic point of view, something that that needs a lot of work and that is a bit of a challenge for me. On the more mundane side, it is very much so that working with young people and creating those opportunities and those points of advocacy needs resources, and it needs time, and it needs people, and we can't always do this by the goodness of our own hearts, which was also pointed out, this point of privilege, right? We need to involve people who might not have the free time or the means. So we need to create those means for people to participate. And this is sometimes a struggle to keep going, to go beyond those short-term projects or go beyond the thing at hand at this moment, but make those processes themselves more sustainable for young people specifically.
Thank you. I can definitely some of these points, and you know, it's a rewarding but sometimes challenging job that you have. For the next question is for Pauline, and I wanted to ask. We were all talking about, you know, developing solution for climate change, but enforcing them is quite hard. Why do you think policymakers are still, you know, concerned about leaving the youth to enforce these kind of measures? And how can we allow policymakers to empower us and all young people to be part of this change, be part of the policies?
Well, I think that a lot is actually being done. We can see here, for example, today we can dialogue all together on such topics. With GCE, we've also been able to reach out to several policymakers within the EU or national policymakers from member states. The thing is that it seems when we are not part of this bubble, it seems complicated or we don't know how to do it. So I think the thing to do would be to clarify and to insist on small steps also to be done to influence politics. For example, demonstrating or simply go and vote. But that's easy things to say. That's harder to enforce it as well. So I think also one of the points is maybe to acknowledge or to take into account, as I was saying, many demonstrations. There is not only the vote, there's also what's being said in the streets, and maybe take into account also these points, although the channels are less conventional. That's according to me the key points to making the youth more involved in the policy-making processes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We still have a couple more questions for another round, maybe. So the next question is for Yurian and Antoine, and it's about concrete changes. Do you feel like you brought concrete changes to your countries, or are there concrete changes that you would like to bring in the foreseeable future in your own countries or town or region, any type of level?
Yeah. Yes, we have seen changes, and we were able to become very successful for corporates to change consumer behavior for them, for the better of that company. So we could increase sales of even airline tickets by making games for consumers. I would like to use that experience to change people's behavior for a better planet.
That's a really nice dream you
Yes.
have. I hope it will come true.
I have the same hope, but I'm convinced, and I know it's possible. So the only thing we have to do is make them.
Yeah. I really wish you then good luck on your work.
Thank you.
Please post it on it. Antoine, is there anything that you would like to add in terms of concrete changes that you've seen?
No, not at the moment. I think Julian's answer is great on what happened in the past. I think what we are working on a project now is around the energy network in the Netherlands, and giving more awareness to people, and also act better on making this huge transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy, and how to use the network we have better. I think there are big issues on a national level there, and if we as citizens also use our resources better, whether it's using the car, using electricity at certain times, peak times, it can really make that transition a lot more fluent. So, but that's still what we're working on at the moment.
Thank you. So you, with gamification, you move from health, to climate, energy. In an ideal world, what would you like to focus on with games? What is like your ideal game that you would like to develop?
Is that a question for me? Yeah. Okay. I would like. I think that everything is possible. We created this trouble on our planet, so we are able to make it, turn it around, and make it better even. And that all has to do with behavior. So what I would like to focus on is making games that are played by large communities of people to help them change their behavior. So behavioral games like recycling. We know how hard it is to train masses of people to recycle, and there are zillions of behavioral aspects to change our climate back to the way it was. So I would like to focus on those behavioral aspects.
And I think to add, there are so many areas which need attention. You saw it also in the drawdown review, so many areas that have a challenge. And we are talking with, for example, with a distributor on fashion goods and also with the clothing company. So fast fashion is a huge, huge thing where we can influence human choice. But also another development we have is around biodiversity in cities. So also from the bottom up, having people have more biodiverse gardens. I think this can be done very well in an individual level, but also collectively have a sort of movement how to make the city more biodiverse. So I hope we can tackle all of them, but we have to see how much collective power we can bring together.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, all the speakers and the audience for the very presentation, comments, and questions. It has been a really impactful session. We invite you, everyone, to watch this again and review all the program of the Connect University Summer School 2021 on Digital for a Planet. I think we had some remarkable speakers, including the ones that we had today. And I'm really proud of DigiConnect for organizing this, and thankful. So please join us for the closing speech that will start at 12:30, and the theme will be the state of the climate and why we should act now. I think it's a perfect continuation to what we discussed this morning. So thank again to all our speakers, and please, so all the audience, follow their work. And if you want to share some insights on social media, get to use #Connect University. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you. I'll just take this opportunity to ask if you can send the presentation so that we can actually publish them on the website. Yes, of course.